Good morning, my name is Johnston. I'm a director in our analytics practice in Deloitte, focusing on telecoms and media clients. And today I will be talking about some of the challenges that telecoms operators have traditionally faced around data and some of the opportunities as well. So I've spent about 9 years working in professional services. I've been fortunate enough to have worked with a number of operators across the world, and I've seen a number of challenges, be that in the more information management side of things around helping with billing data migration and such like, through to helping clients work out what their strategy should be for becoming a more information-driven company. So a whole range of challenges there. And prior to going into consultancy, I worked for one of the operators in the UK as well. So just to check, has everyone had their fill of coffee? Everyone feeling quite alert? Because I'm going to need some help here as we go through, and you'll see why now. So when I was thinking about the themes that I've seen in the sort of BI, analytics, information management space across the years, I started thinking about sort of analogies with films, and one of the things that sort of constantly surprises me is that the challenges that we see are not all that new, truth be told, and it feels like a number of operators have been struggling with them, and indeed companies from other industries have been struggling with them for a number of years. So that it got me thinking of a film. Now, for copyright challenges, I couldn't put the poster up, so I'm going to need a bit of help from you to sort of work out what film I was thinking of. Does anyone know what that is? Yep, so the film is, there we go, very good. Full marks to the gentleman who's drinking a lot of coffee. I feel like living it sometimes. Well, there we go. And if I just expand on that, single customer view, for example, is a great example. How often and how long have organisations been trying to work out, which customers are using which products, and actually is that the same customer as this other customer, and trying to match them all together. It feels like it's been an eternal challenge, and again, nothing particularly new. Accurate views on costs and margins. So where am I really getting profit from in terms of bundles and handsets and all the different combinations? What are my costs fundamentally? A real desire to push information out into the business and stop a sort of mini industry of churning out reports and get people to self-serve. And I remember that being the sort of nirvana 10, 12 years ago, and it's still people are talking about that. And then even in terms of some functional themes, such as data quality. So, is this report actually correct? Is the ARPU for this segment of prepaid users, can I rely on it? I remember doing a piece of work with a CFO who wanted to understand why the revenues he was seeing in the general ledger month by month were different from the revenues in the billing system, and that was just a case of lineage. It wasn't clear where different reports were actually coming from, and once you understand that, it becomes more apparent why the numbers may be different and why you wouldn't expect them to be the same. But that whole sort of effectively data confusion is still very much prevalent. The other thing that we see predominantly is a strong desire to lower cost as well, and I know Mark touched upon big data and whether that's having an impact on the cost. But adding new interfaces seems to be the bugbear of every sort of person in the business. So I've got a new product, I've got a new stream of data, I want to put that into the warehouse. Okay, that will be a 6-figure sum and 6 months kind of thing. That is just a constant challenge. And also access to data. So some people would call it data democracy. There are a number of people out in organisations who want to have access to data, don't have it. Similarly, there are people who have got access to data, and you really want them to use it, and they don't necessarily make use of it. So moving on, what are some of the challenges? This might be a slightly more difficult one to get. Any guesses? Well done. We are going to move into this decade at some point with the films. But Yeah, absolutely. So in my experience, and certainly starting off in the sort of warehousing industry, the typical cycle was, right, we've got information at different places, let's bring it together so we can report on it, which is all goodness. And so we will go through a long requirements gathering process to work out what the business wants at this point in time, and then we will go away and build it. And sort of in 2 years' time or whatever, we will sort of be, ta-da, here it is, and everyone will be really excited. So sort of, you know, kind of build it and they will come. You have a bit of faith, and it'll all be right. Now, clearly there are a few challenges in that one. You know, the whole multiple year thing just doesn't really work any longer. I think businesses move on, so they're, you know, fixing those requirements at the beginning of the programme. I mean, I don't know how many people have sort of seen this scenario before, but you know, when you actually come to the end of the programme, you're like, right, here you go, here's what you wanted, and you're like, was it? Was that what I said? You know, because it's just been so long, it's been such a long cycle. There are a number of reports that talk about how much effort percentage-wise is spent on actually getting the data right, so sourcing it, cleaning it, integrating it, and moving it into the warehouse. Now, the view is that typically on a programme, 80% of the effort, on a sort of typical BI warehousing programme, 80% of the effort is done on that. Now, I wouldn't advocate that you would reduce that, and I don't think you can reduce that. And in fact, I've spent a number of, so probably if I counted it up, probably a number of years, talking people through why it's such a complex piece of work bringing in data from 12 different billing systems and 3 different CRM systems across your various customer groups. But I think that where that, to my mind, the challenge in that one is that it shouldn't be 80% of the entire effort. Basically, there's not enough effort being put in total. You know, if we're spending 80% of the time getting the data right, then what are we doing in terms of actually working out how to exploit it and changing the organisation so that they can exploit it too? You know, what often happens is you end up with a big shiny box sitting in a corner that no one really knows what to do with it. Which touches upon the bottom point actually around due to budgetary constraints. Often that sort of well-meaning change management aspect of it, because it's an organisational change. You're giving people information they didn't have before. You expect them to do things differently, and yet that part is often ignored. Okay, so next one. So why do so many fail to deliver? Any takers on this one? It is indeed. So really, I've touched upon these a little bit already, but not quick enough. You know, if you've got a business problem and you want an answer now, by saying yeah, it will be in the warehouse in 12 months' time, it just doesn't cut it. Similarly, if you've got a business problem now, you want to solve it, then you know, waiting for warehouse cycles, whatever, it's not going to work. Not cheap enough is another thing. I think the days of CFOs signing off sort of 8, even 9-figure sums to build a warehouse are kind of gone now. I think most organisations have done that, and some of them are still scratching their heads as to, right, that was quite a lot of money, and actually what benefit are we seeing from it? That clearly does need to change. And not transformational enough. So you know, really, it's not a technology program. You know, it should be an organisational change program, and thinking about what people do I need in place to exploit this. How am I set up to exploit it? So for that, and I think you know, thinking is becoming a lot more mature in that. In fact, you know, to the point of the CDO, and then you get into the debate of actually, does the CDO look after analytics as well, or is he just focused on the data? And if he's not looking at that, then do we need a chief analytics officer, which I'll touch upon in a minute as well. And then finally, just not perceived as adding enough value. I think there's a whole raft of stats out there about return on investment for warehouses, you know, I'm sure you've all seen them. Sort of 30% fail to be aligned with business strategy, 80% fail, etc., etc. And I think it's just due to the way that it's sort of been built. So on on a positive note, now I think this is going to be a real challenging one actually. I will be impressed if anyone gets this one. There we go. I'm glad I didn't bring any prizes. It was Moneyball. Moneyball. So I don't know. Has everyone seen Moneyball? Anyone not seen it? So but it's fundamentally about doing things differently. And this guy taking a team and using data to improve it, improve the players who's getting on it. And to my mind, I think we're getting to a point whereby it's kind of a bit of a perfect storm, really. So you've got revenues declining in the telco space, which has been year on year, and everyone knows about it. You've got unprecedented focus on data coming from the board. You know, a lot of it's been driven by the big data hype cycle that we talked about earlier. But I think the other aspect is that technology has moved on, and it's now enabling people to do things far nimbler and far quicker. And for example, we did a piece of work with a client who asked a fundamental question: how can we provision products quicker? You know, that was the question. It wasn't, can we build a warehouse or anything like that. It was, how can we provision our products quicker? And there was a number of sort of techniques we could have used, but we said, well, you know, what's the data telling you at the moment? What's happening at the moment? And we got a few different answers, and so therefore it was kind of obvious that maybe the data wasn't as clear, and it wasn't telling as clear a story as it perhaps should be. So we sort of said, right, well, we would take a sort of forensic data-driven approach to this problem, and so within a sort of, I think it was about 10-week period, we pulled together something like 19 disparate sources of data into one place. You know, took a sample and integrated that, mined it to actually understand what's going on, put a visualization layer over it, and built some models as well. And within a 10-week period, we were able to identify something like £12 million worth of savings that could be made from shrinking their end-to-end provision process. And when we took this to the CEO, they were like, so how come when I've asked for this to be done, I've been told sort of 2 years, you know, sort of 8-figure sum kind of thing, and yet you guys have done more in 8 to 10 weeks than we've managed to do in the last 5 years. And it, you know, a lot of that was A, having the will, but B, having the, you know, making use of sort of newer technologies that are just a bit more flexible, and you can do things more quickly, such as, you know, federated data marts, or using discovery tools to point at different sources and pull them in together. Now, that's not to say that was an industrialised solution. It certainly wasn't. It certainly wasn't. But what it did do was it got buy-in. We could have had a conversation to say, do you know what? Information's the new gold. It's the new oil. Whatever. You got to invest in this stuff and have a bit of faith. And then in 18 months or whatever, you'll start seeing dividends. But actually, rather than doing that, we found a difficult business problem. We proved pretty rapidly that there was actually a lot of value in their information, and now they're completely bought into that. And what was also interesting as part of that journey was that we were able to point out sort of deficiencies in their information as well. So we would find something that was going wrong, and we'd be like, right, well, we need to do some root cause analysis in that. How can we dig into that for that particular segment of time, and go back to the source systems, and then lo and behold, oh, it gets deleted after 2 weeks, so the data's gone. So we were then able to say, right, well actually, and why was it gone? Because it's too expensive to store it. And then you get into, well, what about your big data strategy? And what about storing it in something cheaper like Hadoop? And then lo and behold, actually there was a platform sitting there that had been built. No one was really entirely sure what to do with it. And so we were able to sort of influence about keeping data and really build the business case that way. But it was proving it sort of up front, which I think was really good enough, because I sort of summarised the steps there. But I think, you know, being able to move quickly and to be able to tell a story is absolutely imperative in doing that. Okay, final one. There's a bit of a clue. So apparently that's like one of the cars from Minority Report. How exciting is that? So I don't know if you remember when Tom Cruise was sort of doing all his stuff on the screens, but I sometimes think that that's the kind of thing that people would like once they've got beyond the desire of getting analytics on their iPad. So we pulled together a report at the beginning of the year which talks about the trends as we see it, but it's quite an interesting document, and unsurprisingly, I would encourage you all to read it. But what it does, it sets out a point of view, sort of sets out a position, and then gives two different points of view. So, for example, the talent crunch that wasn't. Now, I know you touched upon talent in your opening, Mark. You know, on one hand, you've got companies sort of trying to hoover up anyone who sort of seems to have come across data in their career. As you know, because there's going to be a big push for that. On the other hand, you get people saying, well, actually, we're not seeing the demand yet, and I think it's interesting. I mean, certainly the amount of CVs that I see across my desk now that are data scientists, and if I look back to how long they've been data scientists for, I'm pretty sure they're claiming they were it before the phrase was invented. So you know, but there is a real shift, and there is a real sort of trend in the market that you know, analytics skills are frankly hot. So I won't go through it. There's some stuff around visualization, machine learning, but there was three I was going to touch upon here. The rise of the chief analytics and big data officer. I think the stats that you pulled up were very interesting. That one actually. I think it's in the telecom space. I'm not aware of that sort of fully. Someone being in the board yet who's got that title. But my own personal opinion is that I suspect at some point in 5 or 10 years' time we will look back in wonderment at there not being dedicated resources and frankly a dedicated department focusing on data. I think we scratch our heads and say that's just incredible that data was effectively treated as a byproduct. While people were worrying about the finances and worrying about customer management, but actually data was flowing through, and no one had responsibility or sort of organisational structure around it. Data products run amok. I think that's also an interesting one. Back to the internal and external part. I think the external part tends to be the sexy aspect of it. Can we monetize the data that we've got? With new technologies, can we harness all this data and then potentially build it into products? I think that it's still pretty early days on that, and therefore the jury's out. I certainly hope that it can be another revenue stream, because that would be tremendous for all concerned, really. I think there are obviously privacy concerns. I think there are also some perception concerns. If you think back to some of the sort of truly digital companies that were effectively born digital, they've not had to transform at all. The Googles, the Facebooks of the world. I think there's a different, effectively, contract between their customers and them, and an operator's customers and them. Because you pay money per month or as you use it to have a service for an operator. You may not necessarily expect them to be, therefore, using your data to be selling it on. Whereas I think with some of the truly digital companies, it's always been there. It's always been a sort of fair exchange thing. You use our services for free, and we will sort of use your data, kind of thing. So I think that can be a challenge. I think what is beyond doubt, however, is that far better use of information can be used for internal purposes. I don't think the operators are anywhere near as efficient or effective as they could be, which may actually explain why some of the external challenges around using data externally exist. Because actually, if you're not got the people on board to harness it internally, then it's going to be difficult to then translate that for external purposes. And then the final one I was going to touch upon is the data warehouse dead, which is quite dramatic, quite a dramatic statement. Just out of interest, who here thinks that data warehouses are dying? That is a brave man. Only one.
It'll take years.
Yeah. I think again, you know, there are viewpoints either way. I mean, I think if I think back sort of 2-3 years ago when the big data sort of explosion came out, and sort of new names such as Hadoop and Pig and Hive and things like that were starting being bandied about. I think a lot of people sort of struggle to understand. All right, so I kind of get that, but how does that fit in with what I've already got? And a lot of thinking's gone into that, and I think by and large people are now getting their head around how they can be complementary and coexist. I think that the thing that sort of has me scratching my head at night sometimes is the perception that big data platforms are kind of a bit of a silver bullet. You know, because they absolutely are a different way to store data, and they are an efficient way, and you can load it in quickly and all that sort of stuff. But actually, you can load data into RDBMSs pretty quickly and pretty efficiently as well. But you're still left with the challenges of working out what the relationships are, working out what the metadata is, and working out how to get the data out. You know, so I think it's, you know, it's different, but actually to large degrees the same challenges remain there. And I'm not sure if people are fully aware of that, or maybe some of the hype's slightly bypassed that. Okay, so to summarise, I think, you know, it's been a bit of a challenging journey, I would say, you know, for telcos to date, from a sort of big data perspective, and I use big data more loosely, as in, you know, because I think telcos always had big data, but I do think that I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I think new technologies have come along that are making things easier. I think there's growing appreciation of what information can do, both internally and externally, and I think it's a really exciting place to be at the moment.